how do you deal with severe injuries after 40? I imagine there's some difference in approach to injuries if you look at guys age 20 or 30 or guys who are closer to 50. Any pointers on recovery for older lifters? I've noticed there's a difference the older I've gotten on recovering, 100%, especially compared to when I was 20, and 30. But my best competitive years were closer to 35, 37, 38, I believe. So recovery was starting to become an issue there. 40s, it changed a little bit, 45, 50. There's a lot of factors that play into this when you're talking about recovery and injuries with age, because there's a lot of variables. I'm sure there's aging variables that are associated with this with, hormones, TRT, hormone balance, all this other kind of stuff, which kind of plays into that. But even with that, it's still, after a certain age, and it's a little different for everybody. 40 might be a little too young, for what you're talking about. Most of the time I'm seeing it in people, they're closer to 50 where it starts to become a little different. One of the biggest things that I think happens related to what's specifically being asked here is as you get older, say 45, 50, 55, whatever, and you start to have old person health issues or, bigger injuries, bigger layoffs, things that set you off training for longer periods of time. So as I said earlier, I'm always in the gym. That doesn't mean that the training is good. It just means that it's kind of like maintenance thing, because you have a major surgery that's it knocks you down a little bit, and it has some impact on your ability to recover, because if you're training solid 3-4 days per week over a period of years and years and years, and then you get smacked, and then for some reason you're only making it in once a week, then as you come back and you start building that volume back up again, your general physical preparedness drops, your work capacity drops, your strength may come back really quick, but that work capacity and all the other stuff your base still hasn't come back up. So one of the issues that happens is that base kind of gets forgotten about, because as you start to come back up again, you're starting to feel your strength come back on the things that you like to do the most. You're like, okay, cool, I'm coming back. Muscle memory is working. All this stuff is working. But you forgot that, for years you were training 4 or 5 times per week. Now you're only training once or twice per week. That's still going to have some deconditioning impact on the work capacity, general physical preparedness. And those are the things that help with recovery more so than what people think it does, because it's your ability to circulate nutrients, to circulate blood, circulate recovery, all those things. So that gets pulled away, and then you start going back into these strength phases without bringing that back up again. What happens over a period of time, because I've seen it with so many people now, it's a slow, gradual process that 3-4 years into this, then, they're not recovering. For whatever reason, the work capacity just hit. It's unnoticed at the very beginning, or not that noticeable, but years down the line that crosses a line, I suppose, to where it matters now. And now you're getting hit with it. And so how do you deal with it, right? Is to understand that part of that, first off, if you're injured at that point, then yes, I think that's important to, keep the strength up, with the things that you can keep the strength up with. It's also important to keep your work capacity and your base up. Actually, it would be a better time to try to build that work capacity and base. Sometimes it might be difficult, especially if you're talking about, a lower body type injury. So there's going to be more time off. So it's hard to walk, great distances for a couple weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, after a hip replacement, for instance. But that has to come back up, and it has to be on the radar at all times. That's not saying that there can't be times, because all your training should be phasic. That's going to help eliminate a lot of this as well. So there should be phases that are going to focus more on building work capacity and the conditioning that we're talking about here. And then you can, if you want to really push that strength phase that you're in, as long as that work capacity is at its base, you can start to drop it a little bit as you try to peak on whatever you're peaking with. If it's a powerlifting meet, strongman event, you can start to drop some of that out depending upon what you're training for, to help kind of get more peak, or super compensation. Peaking is more so than the super for whatever that is. You can pull it out then, but it has to be there before you pull it out. So that would be the difference that I see and it becomes a little bit harder, as you get older, because there's more responsibilities. So it's a little different.